Before you make this official, officer, read the identification I handed you." The woman's voice was calm enough to make the hallway feel even quieter. Officer Ryan Keller barely looked at the leather credential case resting on the security counter between them. His attention stayed on the cardboard archive box at her feet, packed with sealed court files, colored tabs, and folders stamped with the county judicial seal. To him, the situation already made sense. A black woman he did not recognize was standing in a restricted courthouse corridor before 8 in the morning, carrying documents that were not supposed to leave secured chambers without authorization. He had decided what the problem was before he had finished asking the questions. Maya Bennett stood perfectly still beneath the cold fluorescent lights, dressed in a navy suit beneath a dark wool coat, one hand resting beside the box, the other relaxed at her side. She had answered every question. She had offered identification. She had even suggested that Ryan call the judge's chambers upstairs. He had done none of those things. Instead, he stared at her with the confidence of a man who believed hesitation was weakness. "You can explain all of this downtown if necessary," he said. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, not with fear, but with disbelief. "You have everything you need to verify who I am right now." Ryan glanced toward the security desk where court clerk Emily Parker had stopped organizing morning files. She was watching them carefully now. 2 attorneys waiting near the elevators had also gone silent. The courthouse was beginning to wake around them. Shoes clicked against polished stone. A metal detector chimed near the public entrance. Somewhere deeper inside the building, a clerk called out a docket number. Yet in that narrow hallway, every sound seemed distant. Ryan reached for his incident form. "You were found carrying restricted court material in a controlled area. Until I confirm where these came from, you are being detained." Maya looked down at the credential case he had refused to open. "That is exactly what I am asking you to confirm." He ignored her. "Put the files on the counter." She did. Slowly, carefully. Not because she accepted his assumptions, but because she understood procedure better than he realized. Ryan began reading the labels on the folders without opening the sealed contents. Civil review, administrative conduct, judicial services, internal complaint summary. His expression remained firm, but something in the final folder made him pause. The tab was partially hidden beneath another document, revealing only 2 typed initials, R.K. Emily noticed it too. Her eyes moved from the folder to Ryan, then back again. Maya saw the reaction, but said nothing. She simply glanced toward the small camera mounted above the hallway entrance. "Is your body camera recording?" she asked. Ryan looked almost offended by the question. "Of course it is." Maya gave a small nod. "Good." That single word unsettled him more than any argument could have. He picked up the credential case again, but instead of opening it, he placed it beside the incident form as though it were just another item waiting to be processed. "Name?" he asked. Maya held his gaze. "It is printed on the identification you already have." Ryan exhaled impatiently. "For the report." She answered. "Maya Bennett." Emily froze. Not visibly enough for Ryan to notice, but enough for Maya to see. Somewhere upstairs, in a courtroom that had not yet opened, a chair at the head of an administrative review panel was sitting empty. Ryan had no idea who was supposed to be sitting there. He had no idea why the sealed box mattered. And he had absolutely no idea that his own name was inside it. 90 minutes earlier, before the first attorneys reached the courthouse steps and before Ryan Keller ever saw her carrying the archive box, Maya Bennett was sitting at a small kitchen table in her Richmond townhouse with a cup of coffee cooling beside an open case calendar. Dawn had barely pushed through the windows, leaving the room washed in soft gray light. Her day had already begun. She had reviewed 3 witness summaries, checked the administrative docket twice, and read the same handwritten note at the top of one complaint more than once. Pattern concerns require independent review. That sentence was why she was going in early. The courthouse had received a series of complaints involving security encounters over the previous year, several of them from Black residents, public defenders, and courthouse visitors who said they had been treated as suspicious before anyone verified who they were or why they were there. Some complaints had been dismissed quickly. Others had been marked inconclusive. A few contained contradictions Maya could not ignore. She did not believe in deciding guilt from paperwork alone, but she believed even less in looking away from repetition. At 6:45, she closed the final file and slid it into a leather portfolio. Today's review would be confidential. Only a small panel knew the full agenda, and the sealed records had been stored overnight in a secure records room rather than delivered to chambers. Maya had made that choice herself. She wanted the original files, not summaries prepared by someone else. By 7:10, she was dressed in a navy suit, low professional heels, and a dark wool coat suitable for the cold Virginia morning. Nothing about her clothing announced authority. She preferred it that way. Titles mattered in court because procedure required them. Outside the courtroom, she had always believed respect should come before recognition. At 7:25, she drove the short distance downtown, parked in the judge's reserve garage, and entered through the employee side of the courthouse. The building felt different before opening hours. Quieter, more honest somehow. Custodians moved through empty corridors. Security monitors glowed behind unattended desks. The air smelled faintly of floor polish and coffee. Maya greeted two clerks by name before heading downstairs to records. There, an employee named Luis Moreno had already prepared the sealed archive box. "Everything the panel requested is here," he said. "Original complaints, supporting statements, access logs, and the internal conduct summaries." Maya checked the seal. "Any additions since yesterday?" Luis hesitated. One supplemental file came in late. He pointed to a folder near the top. A small white tab showed two initials. "RK." Maya noticed them but did not react. "Was it verified?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then it stays with the others." She signed the transfer sheet and lifted the box herself. Luis offered to carry it upstairs. Maya declined. "I have it." She had carried heavier things in her career than paper. By 7:35, she was walking toward the restricted judicial corridor, where the review panel would meet behind closed doors at 8:15. Judge Samuel Whitmore had already texted that he was on his way. Court clerk Emily Parker was setting up the administrative room. Captain Thomas Reed had been told security leadership might be called later if the panel needed clarification. Everything was ordinary, controlled, procedural. That was exactly how Maya wanted it. Then, as she turned the corner near the security checkpoint, she saw a uniformed officer she did not recognize. Ryan Keller looked up from his desk. His eyes went first to her face, then to the sealed court files in her arms. Maya offered a polite nod and continued toward the corridor. "Ma'am," he called. She stopped. "Yes." Ryan stood. "Where are you going with those files?" Maya shifted the box slightly and reached for her credential case. "Judicial chambers." She held the identification toward him. For one brief second, all he had to do was open it, read the name, and let the morning continue. Instead, his attention remained fixed on the box. And that was where everything began. Ryan Keller had been on duty since 6:30 that morning, long before most of the courthouse staff arrived, and he liked that hour because the building still felt orderly. Quiet hallways, predictable routines, clear lines between where people belonged and where they did not. After 8 years with judicial services, he trusted those lines almost as much as he trusted his own instincts. He had worked enough difficult mornings to believe hesitation created problems. People forgot identification. Attorneys wandered into restricted corridors. Visitors insisted they had permission when they did not. Ryan had learned to make decisions quickly, and over time, quick decisions had started to feel like good decisions simply because nobody around him challenged them. That morning, he had already checked 2 delivery workers, redirected a contractor, and questioned a man who entered through the employee side by mistake. Nothing unusual, nothing memorable. Then Maya appeared carrying the sealed archive box. Ryan noticed the files before he noticed anything else. The judicial seal, the restricted tabs, the confidential markings. Then he noticed her, a black woman in professional clothing, calm, composed, walking toward the judicial corridor as though no explanation would be necessary. Something inside him tightened. Not alarm exactly. Recognition of a pattern he believed he understood. He had seen people act confident when they wanted security to assume they belonged. At least, that was what he told himself. "Where are you going with those files?" he asked. She stopped immediately. No argument. No sudden movement. Judicial chambers. She reached into her coat and presented a credential case. Ryan took it, but his attention stayed on the box. He saw her name, Maya Bennett. He saw an official seal. He did not take the extra second required to read the title printed beneath it. That second mattered. He simply assumed the identification gave her access to some administrative office and moved on to what he considered the real issue. Who authorized you to remove these records? Maya's expression changed slightly. They were released to me by records officer Luis Moreno. Ryan looked toward the hallway behind her. Do you have a transfer receipt? Yes. Show me. She opened the leather portfolio resting on top of the box and handed him the signed form. Ryan scanned it quickly. Again, too quickly. The signature was valid. The destination was listed. Judicial Review Panel. He could have called Records. He could have called Chambers. He could have asked Captain Thomas Reed to confirm. Instead, another thought took over. People could sign the wrong forms. People could misunderstand access. Documents could be moved improperly even when paperwork looked clean. And somewhere beneath all those explanations was another belief Ryan rarely admitted, even to himself. People who truly belonged in powerful spaces usually looked familiar. Maya did not. That unfamiliarity became evidence in his mind. You need to wait here while I verify this, he said. Maya looked directly at him. Then verify it. Her calmness irritated him. He heard challenge where there was only instruction. I know how to do my job. Then do it, she replied. No raised voice. No insult. Just 4 words. Ryan felt his jaw tighten. From the security desk, Emily Parker glanced over. She knew Maya's name, though Ryan did not know that yet. He also did not know that Emily had watched him receive the credential case and fail to read it carefully. Ryan placed the identification on the counter. Do not move from this area. Maya remained still. Officer Keller, I am scheduled upstairs. He looked at her sharply. She had read his nameplate. For some reason, hearing his name from her made him feel watched. Judged. He mistook that feeling for disrespect. Everyone has somewhere they need to be, he said. Maya's eyes settled on him with a patience that made him even more defensive. Somewhere upstairs, people are waiting for these files. Ryan gave a small, dismissive nod. Then they can wait. Emily stopped typing. Maya said nothing for several seconds. She looked at the credential case, still lying unopened on the counter, then back at Ryan. He believed the silence meant she was finally accepting his authority. What he did not understand was that Maya had already given him 3 opportunities to correct himself. She had offered identification. She had provided the transfer receipt. She had told him to verify the destination. Each time, Ryan had chosen assumption over confirmation, and every choice was being recorded. The hallway had grown busier by the minute, and that made Ryan Keller more determined not to look uncertain. Attorneys passed through the security checkpoint carrying briefcases. A court reporter hurried toward the elevators. 2 clerks slowed when they noticed Maya Bennett standing beside the sealed archive box while Ryan filled out an incident form. What had begun as a simple verification now had an audience, and Ryan could feel it. Pride entered the space where judgment should have been. Maya noticed the shift immediately. She had spent years in courtrooms watching people become more committed to a bad decision simply because others were watching. Officer Keller, she said evenly, called Judicial Chambers. Ryan kept writing. I said I am verifying the situation. You have not made a single verification call. His pen stopped. He looked up. You need to understand that restricted records are not carried around this building without oversight. Maya glanced at the signed transfer sheet on the counter. You are looking at the oversight. Ryan gave a short, humorless smile. That is not for you to decide. Emily Parker lifted her eyes from the security desk. She knew exactly how strange that sentence sounded. Maya could have ended the encounter in seconds. She could have stated her title clearly. She could have demanded Captain Thomas Reed. She could have asked Emily to identify her in front of everyone. Instead, she remained focused on something more important. Whether Ryan would follow procedure when he believed the person in front of him had no influence over him. Please open my credential case and read the full identification, Maya said. Ryan glanced at it, still lying beside the incident report. I have already seen it. No, Maya replied. You looked at it. The distinction landed harder than she intended. One of the attorneys near the elevator turned his head. Ryan noticed. His face tightened. Ma'am, I am not going to debate security protocol with you in the hallway. Maya's voice stayed calm. Then follow the protocol. Confirm the transfer with records officer Luis Moreno. Call Chambers. Or contact Captain Reed. 3 options. 3 simple ways out. Ryan chose none of them. I have this under control. Emily finally spoke. Officer Keller, I can call upstairs if you want. Ryan turned toward her. Emily, stay out of it. The words were not loud, but they silenced her. Maya watched that exchange carefully. It told her more than Ryan realized. He was no longer protecting records. He was protecting his decision. "You are scheduled somewhere?" Ryan asked, returning to the form. "Yes." "Where?" "Upstairs." "For what purpose?" Maya looked at him for a long moment. "A judicial administrative review." Ryan wrote the phrase down as though it confirmed his suspicion. "And you expect me to believe you can simply walk into a closed judicial review, carrying confidential complaints?" Emily's expression changed. The question itself revealed how little Ryan understood about the woman standing in front of him. Maya did not react. "I expect you to verify my authorization." Ryan placed the pen down. "Until I determine otherwise, you are not going anywhere." The courthouse seemed to become quieter around them despite the growing morning traffic. Maya drew a slow breath. "Officer Keller, I am going to give you one final opportunity before you make this an official detention." Ryan folded his arms. "Is that supposed to intimidate me?" "No." Her answer came immediately. "It is supposed to protect the integrity of what happens next." He stared at her, convinced the calmness was arrogance. Maya continued. "Read the identification. Call Chambers. Contact your captain. Any one of those steps will answer every question you have." Ryan looked at the credential case. For half a second, his hand moved toward it. Emily saw it. Maya saw it. Then he pulled his hand back. "No," the word was simple. "Final." Maya gave one small nod. "Then make sure your report reflects that I asked you to verify my credentials, and you declined." Ryan picked up his pen again. "It will reflect what I decide is relevant." That was the moment Emily stopped merely watching. She quietly turned toward her computer and opened the judicial calendar. Ryan did not notice. Maya did. On the screen, at 8:15 that morning, one entry appeared in bold administrative lettering. Judicial Services Conduct Review. Presiding Officer, Honorable Maya Bennett. Emily stared at the name, then slowly looked across the desk at the black woman Ryan had just refused to identify. Maya met her eyes. Neither woman said a word. Ryan continued writing, unaware that the easiest chance he would ever have to correct himself had just passed. Ryan Keller did not notice the change in Emily Parker's face because he was still focused on completing the incident report. He wrote slowly now, choosing each word with the confidence of someone creating the official version of what had happened. Unauthorized possession of restricted court files. Refusal to clarify access. Possible security violation. Maya Bennett watched him write without interrupting. She had learned long ago that people revealed themselves most clearly when they believed they controlled the record. The sealed archive box remained on the counter between them. Ryan finally looked at it again. "I need to inventory what you were carrying." Maya's expression did not change. "Those files are part of a confidential judicial review." "Then the inventory should be simple. You should contact Chambers before opening anything." He ignored the warning. Emily shifted in her chair. "Officer Keller, the calendar confirms there is a judicial review scheduled upstairs." Ryan looked over. "I know she said that." "No, I mean it is actually on the calendar." He gave Emily an impatient look. "That does not prove she belongs in it." Maya's eyes settled on him. There it was again. Not whether the review existed. Not whether her paperwork matched. Whether she belonged. Ryan pulled the top folder closer, careful not to break any sealed evidentiary envelope, but enough to read the administrative cover sheet. Judicial Services Conduct Review. His expression tightened slightly. The next line listed several complaint categories. Access control. Professional conduct. Disparate treatment concerns. Documentation procedures. Ryan stopped reading for a moment. "What kind of review is this?" Maya answered quietly. "The kind you should not be examining without authorization. You are the one who brought it through my checkpoint. I brought it through an employee corridor with a signed transfer sheet and valid credentials." Ryan looked at the folder again. He turned one page. Another complaint reference appeared beneath it. Then another. Emily could see the tension in his shoulders. He had expected paperwork that would justify his suspicion. Instead, he was looking at records that raised questions about the very unit he worked for. One tab near the middle had shifted enough to expose a typed name. Keller, Ryan. He froze. It lasted less than a second, but Maya saw it. So did Emily. Ryan moved the folder slightly, as though changing its position might change what he had read. "Why is my name in this file?" Maya did not answer. "You need to put that back exactly where you found it." Ryan looked at her. "Is this about me?" This is about a review you are not authorized to conduct. His certainty began to crack, but pride rushed in to cover it. If my name is in a security file, I have a right to know why. Maya's voice remained controlled. No, you have a right to due process. Those are not the same thing. Emily looked back at the judicial calendar. 8:15 was getting closer. The administrative room upstairs was already marked occupied. Judge Samuel Whitmore had checked in. 2 panel members had arrived. 1 chair remained empty. Emily clicked into the scheduling notes, and her breathing changed. Presiding officer arrival pending. She looked at Maya again. Ryan continued. Were you bringing complaints about me into that meeting? Maya gave him nothing. No accusation. No satisfaction. Officer Keller closed the file. He stared at her, then at his own name on the tab. Who gave you access to this? You have already asked me that question, and I still do not have an answer I like. Maya held his gaze. That is not the standard. The hallway had gone almost completely quiet around them. Even the attorneys near the elevator were pretending not to listen while listening to every word. Ryan closed the folder, but too late. The damage was done. Not to Maya. To his certainty. For the first time that morning, he was no longer sure he understood what was happening. Emily quietly picked up the desk phone. Ryan looked over. Who are you calling? She hesitated, then answered. Chambers. Maya remained still. Ryan's face tightened. I told you I had this handled. Emily looked at him differently now. I think Chambers needs to know why their review has not started. Ryan glanced at the clock. 8:12. 3 minutes before the meeting was supposed to begin. Upstairs, a judge was already asking why the presiding officer had not arrived. Downstairs, Ryan Keller was standing, beside a sealed file bearing his own name, still unaware that the woman he had detained was the person everyone was waiting for. Emily kept the phone close to her ear while Ryan Keller watched her with growing frustration. The call connected almost immediately. She gave her name, identified the security desk, and explained that the judicial review scheduled for 8:15 had been delayed because a woman carrying the sealed files was being held downstairs. There was a pause on the other end. Emily listened, glanced toward Maya Bennett, then straightened in her chair. Yes, sir, she said quietly. She is here. Ryan heard the words, but did not understand them yet. Maya did. She lowered her eyes for a moment, almost as if the morning had finally reached the point she knew was coming. Long before she ever wore a judicial robe, Maya had learned what it meant to enter rooms where people made assumptions before they heard facts. She had begun her legal career as a public defender in Richmond, representing people who often arrived in court already carrying the weight of someone else's judgment. She learned early that dignity could disappear quickly when a person was treated like a case number instead of a human being. Later, as a prosecutor, she became known for an unusual habit. She asked one more question when everyone else seemed ready to stop asking. If a witness had been ignored, she wanted to know why. If a report did not match the evidence, she read it again. If someone in authority said, "That is just how things are done," Maya wanted to see the rule that proved it. Years later, when she was appointed to the bench, those habits never left her. Neither did the memory of being underestimated. She had walked into legal conferences where people assumed she was an assistant. She had been handed documents meant for another lawyer because someone decided she could not possibly be the person leading the hearing. She had learned something from every one of those moments. Respect offered only after a title was revealed was not respect. It was obedience to status. That was why Maya rarely announced who she was unless procedure required it. She did not hide her position, but she refused to use it as a shortcut around ordinary treatment. The courthouse review happening that morning had begun nearly 4 months earlier, after separate complaints started showing the same uncomfortable pattern. Visitors described being questioned more aggressively in restricted areas even when they had valid identification. Several black attorneys reported that their access credentials were examined longer than those of colleagues standing beside them. A courthouse employee said she had been asked to prove she worked there 3 times in 1 month. None of those incidents alone established misconduct. Maya knew that, but patterns were not built from one event. They were built from repetition. That was why she had requested original records, body camera logs, access reports, and complaint histories from judicial services. She wanted facts before conclusions. She wanted the process to be fair to everyone, including the officers whose names appeared in the files. Ryan did not know any of this. He did not know that Maya had personally insisted the review panel avoid premature discipline. He did not know she had rejected one recommendation because the evidence was incomplete. He did not know the folder bearing his initials was not a verdict. It was a question waiting to be examined. And now, without realizing it, he had added another question to the record. Emily was still on the phone. "Yes, Judge Whitmore," she said. Ryan looked toward her sharply. Maya remained silent. Emily listened again, then covered the receiver with one hand. "He wants Captain Reed notified immediately." Ryan's confidence shifted. "Why?" Emily looked at Maya, then back at him. "Because the panel cannot begin without its presiding officer." Ryan frowned. "Then where is the presiding officer?" Emily did not answer. She did not need to. The elevator at the end of the corridor opened, and Captain Thomas Reed stepped out with Judge Samuel Whitmore beside him. Ryan turned toward them, still holding the incident form. Whitmore's eyes went directly past him to Maya. The entire hallway seemed to hold its breath. Judge Samuel Whitmore stepped out of the elevator first, his expression composed but unmistakably concerned, with Captain Thomas Reed only a pace behind him. Ryan Keller straightened automatically. For the first time that morning, the confidence in his face looked less certain. Whitmore did not look at the incident form. He did not look at the sealed archive box. His attention went directly to Maya Bennett. "Judge Bennett," he said, "we have been waiting for you upstairs." The words were quiet. They did not need volume. Every person in the hallway heard them. Ryan's eyes moved from Whitmore to Maya, then to the credential case still resting beside his unfinished report. He said nothing. Captain Reed stopped near the security desk and looked at Ryan. "What is going on here?" Ryan opened his mouth, but no explanation came immediately. Emily Parker lowered the phone slowly. The two attorneys near the elevator stopped pretending not to listen. Maya remained exactly as she had been from the beginning, calm, steady, hands relaxed at her sides. Whitmore stepped closer. "Your Honor, are you all right?" That was the moment Ryan finally understood. Not part of it. All of it. Maya Bennett was not an employee trying to enter a judicial review. She was not a courier carrying confidential records. She was not a visitor with paperwork he considered suspicious. She was the supervising judge expected to preside over the review he had delayed. Ryan looked down at the credential case. His hand moved toward it, slower this time. He opened it fully. Honorable Maya Bennett, Supervising Judge, Judicial Administrative Division. The title had been there from the beginning. Nothing had been hidden from him. He simply had not read it. His face lost color. "Judge Bennett, I did not realize," Maya interrupted gently. "That is the problem, Officer Keller." No anger. No raised voice. The calmness made the sentence heavier. Captain Reed picked up the signed transfer sheet and read it carefully. "This authorization is valid." Ryan swallowed. "I was trying to protect restricted materials." Maya looked at him. "Protecting court records is your responsibility. Verifying information is also your responsibility." Ryan glanced toward Emily, perhaps hoping she would explain how confusing the situation had seemed. She did not. Whitmore looked at the incident form. Was Judge Bennett detained? Ryan hesitated, temporarily, pending verification. Maya's eyes shifted toward the report. "Verification I requested several times." Reed looked directly at Ryan. "Did you contact records?" Silence. "Did you call Chambers?" More silence. "Did you contact me?" Ryan lowered his eyes. "No, sir." The hallway felt different now. Nothing physical had changed. The same lights hummed overhead. The same courthouse doors opened and closed. But the balance of authority had turned completely. Ryan had believed the badge gave him control of the moment. Now procedure itself was asking him questions. Maya reached for the sealed archive box. Reed stopped her politely. "Your Honor, let someone carry that upstairs." She shook her head. "No. It stays with me until the transfer is complete." Even now, she followed the same rules she had asked Ryan to follow. That detail was not lost on anyone. Whitmore looked toward the clock. 8:21. "The panel can still convene." Maya nodded, then turned back to Ryan. He looked as though he expected anger, humiliation, maybe even an order removing him from duty on the spot. Instead, Maya said, "Officer Keller, preserve your body camera recording from the moment this interaction began." Ryan looked up quickly. Reed's expression sharpened. Maya continued, "Preserve the hallway security footage, the incident report, and every entry made at this checkpoint this morning." Ryan's voice came out quieter than before. Am I under investigation? Maya held his gaze. You are part of a record that will be reviewed. He looked toward the archive box, suddenly remembering the tab with his name. Maya saw the realization return to his face. Whitmore reached for the elevator button. Judge Bennett, we should go. Maya lifted the credential case from the counter and slipped it back into her coat. Before stepping away, she looked at Ryan one final time. You were given the truth before you were given my title. Then she walked toward the elevator, leaving Ryan beside his own unfinished report, the body camera still recording, and the knowledge that the woman he had refused to identify was now about to preside over the very review containing his name. The elevator doors closed behind Maya Bennett, Judge Samuel Whitmore, and Captain Thomas Reed, leaving Ryan Keller alone with the unfinished incident report and the weight of a truth he could no longer avoid. For several seconds, nobody at the security desk spoke. Emily Parker looked down at her monitor, then back toward Ryan. His body camera was still recording. That fact suddenly felt different now. What had seemed like routine documentation only minutes earlier had become something he could not edit, explain away, or reduce to memory. Upstairs, the review panel reconvened at 8:29. Maya placed the sealed archive box on the conference table and remained standing while Whitmore opened the administrative session. Two panel members watched her carefully, already aware that something unusual had delayed the meeting. Captain Reed entered several minutes later carrying a preservation notice for the hallway footage and security records. Before we begin, Maya said, I need to disclose an incident that creates a potential conflict. The room became still. She explained what had happened downstairs in direct, factual language. No exaggeration. No accusation. She described the identification she provided, the transfer receipt, the requests for verification, and Ryan's refusal to contact Chambers or his captain before detaining her. Then she said the sentence nobody expected. Officer Keller's name appears in the materials scheduled for review today. Whitmore leaned back slowly. One of the panel attorneys looked toward the archive box. Maya continued, because I am now personally involved in an encounter concerning the same officer, I am recusing myself from any finding related to his conduct. The words carried more power than anger ever could. Ryan had feared Maya would use her position against him. Instead, she removed herself from the decision. Whitmore nodded. That is appropriate. Maya slid the relevant folder across the table without opening it. The independent panel should review the existing complaints, alongside this morning's preserved footage. Captain Reed looked at her. Existing complaints? Whitmore opened the file. The first complaint involved a black defense attorney who said Ryan repeatedly questioned her courthouse access despite valid credentials. The second came from a black county employee who reported being stopped twice in a restricted corridor while white coworkers passed without challenge. A third described similar language about whether someone truly belonged in the building. None of the complaints had previously resulted in discipline. Each had been treated as an isolated misunderstanding. Maya had requested the review precisely because isolated events can look different when placed side by side. Then Captain Reed's secure tablet chimed. The hallway video had already been preserved. Ryan's body camera footage was available as well. Whitmore looked toward the screen. We review facts, not assumptions, he said. The recording began. Ryan's voice filled the conference room. Maya offering identification. Ryan failing to read the title. Maya requesting a call to Chambers. Ryan declining. The signed transfer sheet. The unanswered request to contact Captain Reed. No shouting. No physical confrontation. Just decision after decision captured in sequence. That was what made the room so quiet. The incident did not require interpretation to become uncomfortable. Its pattern was visible. Downstairs, Ryan sat in a small administrative office while Reed's deputy temporarily reassigned him away from public-facing security duties pending review. Ryan stared at the blank wall in front of him. He had thought the worst discovery that morning was learning Maya was a supervising judge. He was wrong. Her title was embarrassing. The footage was evidence. By 10:15, the independent panel had requested every prior access complaint involving Ryan, along with comparison data from the same shifts and checkpoints. Maya signed the formal recusal document before leaving the room. As she placed the pen down, Whitmore looked at her. You could have handled this very differently. Maya closed her leather portfolio. That is exactly why I should not decide his case. Then, she glanced toward the sealed files. If the process only feels fair when we control the outcome, it was never fair to begin with. Downstairs, Ryan's unfinished incident report remained preserved beside the credential case he had finally learned to read too late, while upstairs the review expanded beyond one morning, one officer, and one mistake. 3 weeks later, the courthouse looked almost exactly the same from the outside. The same stone steps, the same glass doors, the same security stations beneath the cold morning lights. But inside, small things had changed. New verification procedures had been posted at every employee entrance. Access checks now required documented reasons. Supervisors reviewed disputed stops before the end of each shift. Complaints that had once been treated as isolated misunderstandings were being examined together, not to presume wrongdoing, but to determine whether repetition had been ignored. Ryan Keller had not returned to public-facing security duty. The independent review remained active, and several earlier complaints connected to his checkpoint assignments had been reopened. He had provided a formal statement, turned over his records, and attended administrative interviews with representation present. No one had announced a final punishment. Maya Bennett had insisted that the same principle applied to him that applied to everyone else. Evidence first, conclusions after. That morning, a public judicial integrity hearing filled one of the larger courtrooms. Attorneys sat beside courthouse employees. Community members occupied the back rows. Captain Thomas Reed sat near the aisle with a thick binder of revised security policies. Emily Parker had been asked to testify about the original encounter and the steps available to Ryan that morning. Judge Samuel Whitmore presided over the administrative session because Maya's recusal remained in effect for any finding concerning Ryan personally. Maya entered through the side door carrying the same leather portfolio she had carried weeks earlier. Conversations softened immediately. She noticed the reaction and almost wished they had not. Respect felt different when everyone already knew the title. She took her seat as a judicial administrator participating only in the broader policy discussion. Across the room, Ryan sat beside his representative. He looked older somehow, not physically changed, but stripped of the certainty he once wore so comfortably. When Emily described how Maya had offered identification, Ryan lowered his eyes. When Captain Reed explained the new verification policy, he listened without interruption. Then the review council summarized the reopened complaints. A black defense attorney whose credentials had been questioned repeatedly. A county employee stopped more than once despite authorized access. A visitor whose explanation had been discounted before records were checked. None of the cases alone proved intent. Together, however, they raised enough concern to require corrective action, additional training, closer supervision, and continued review of several personnel decisions. Ryan's case would remain separate because due process required individual findings. Maya appreciated that distinction. Accountability was strongest when it resisted the temptation to become spectacle. Near the end of the hearing, Whitmore invited her to address the broader institutional issue. Maya stood. She looked first toward the public gallery, then toward the courthouse employees, then briefly toward Ryan. "This building depends on authority," she said. "Judges have it. Officers have it. Clerks exercise it in smaller ways every day. But authority is not proof that our assumptions are correct." The room remained silent. A credential should be read before it is dismissed. A record should be checked before suspicion becomes action. And a person should not need an impressive title before we decide they deserve patience. Ryan looked up. Maya did not speak to him directly. She did not need to. The goal of this review is not to create fear among people doing difficult jobs. It is to make sure confidence never replaces verification. After the hearing, employees returned to work. Files were carried back to records. Courtrooms reopened. The institution moved forward, imperfect but altered. Maya walked through the same corridor where everything had begun, this time carrying only her leather portfolio. A new security officer glanced at her identification, read it carefully, and handed it back with a polite nod. Maya thanked him and continued toward chambers. She stopped once near the elevator and looked across the lobby at strangers moving through the building, people whose names and titles she would never know. Then she thought about the lesson the courthouse had nearly missed. Justice was never truly tested when powerful people were recognized. It was tested in the moments before recognition, when someone believed the person standing in front of them had no power at all.